My mom and sister secretly forged documents to steal my condo while I was overseas. So, I let them think they won, voided the deed, and watched security lock them out in real time. You ever have that moment where you walk into your own home, the place you've worked your absolute tail off to pay for, sacrificing your youth and your sanity only to find people sitting there like they own it, feet up, drinks in hand, without a single ounce of shame on their faces? Yeah, that was me a few months ago. But before I get to the part where I almost lost my mind, and the part where I systematically dismantled their lives instead, let me rewind. Because this wasn't just some random squatter situation. This was deeply personal. This was my own flesh and blood. My name's Liam. I'm 33 years old, and for the last 8 years, I've worked as a marine systems engineer for a global freight network. If that sounds fancy, let me strip away the illusion. It means I spend 10 months out of the year living out of a suitcase in places like Dubai, Hamburg, Sydney, and Seoul. It means long, grueling nights in shipyards, breathing in diesel fumes and salt water, fixing catastrophic mechanical failures that nobody else has the expertise to handle. It means missing birthdays, skipping holidays, and having a phone that rings at 3 a.m. with emergencies, but I've done well for myself. I bought a condo back when I was 29. It wasn't a massive mansion, but it was a pristine, modern 2-bedroom unit in a highly desirable part of town, overlooking a beautiful park. I aggressively paid off most of the mortgage in just 4 years. I kept the place in immaculate condition. When I got deployed overseas again about 6 months ago for a massive infrastructure project in South Korea, I left everything in perfect order. I even had a high-end smart home security system installed. I gave a backup emergency code to my mom, assuming that was the responsible, adult thing to do in case a pipe burst or the alarms went off. Before you think I'm dangerously naive, you need to understand my family dynamic. My mom, Martha, is what I'd call a selective nurturer. She fiercely dotes on my older sister, Sarah, who is 36, treating her like a fragile princess who constantly needs rescuing from the big bad world. But when it comes to me, I'm the independent one, the one who doesn't need help. Which, to be fair, I don't. But it still stings when you get a half-hearted, "Oh, that's nice, honey," for a major career promotion, while your sister gets a full-blown celebratory dinner just for remembering to renew her car registration on time. Sarah has always been the golden child, despite a track record that would make a disaster relief team wince. 2 spectacularly failed marriages, a long string of jobs she quit because the vibes were toxic, and a general tendency to treat adult consequences like optional suggestions. But in my mom's eyes, Sarah was just a victim of circumstance. I managed to stay on good terms with both of them by keeping my distance and keeping my mouth shut, or so I thought. The very first hint that something was horribly wrong came during one of our weekly video calls while I was stationed in Seoul. I remember the exact moment. I was standing on my tiny rented balcony overlooking the harbor, sipping the worst instant coffee imaginable, waiting for the connection to stabilize. Mom answered with her usual frantic energy, but she kept glancing nervously at something off-screen. "Hey sweetheart, how's Korea?" she asked, her voice tight, trying to sound casual and failing miserably. "Pretty good, long hours, but the crew here is solid. You doing okay?" She forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, we're fine. Just busy. Sarah has been staying with me for a little while." My eyebrows lifted. "Everything okay with her and David?" There was a heavy pause. "They're separating. She's filing for divorce." "Again?" I said, before I could filter myself. "That's her second one, right?" Mom gave me that classic look, the one where her lips tighten like she just bit into a raw lemon. "It is not her fault, Liam. David turned out to be incredibly manipulative. She needed to get out immediately." I nodded slowly, not wanting to argue. "Okay, I hope she's doing all right." "She's so strong," Mom replied quickly. Then, she shifted the camera angle just a fraction of an inch, revealing Sarah in the background. Sarah was lounging on a very familiar-looking gray leather couch, a glass of red wine in her hand, wearing my old university hoodie. She noticed the camera and gave a lazy, half-hearted wave. "Hey bro," Sarah drawled, "your place still have that HEPA air purifier in the master bedroom? I'm apparently allergic to dust now." I blinked, the exhaustion suddenly vanishing from my brain. "Wait. What do you mean times place?" Sarah smirked, not even bothering to mute her side of the call. "Oh, you didn't tell him yet?" she said to Mom. "Tell me what?" My voice dropped an octave. Mom cleared her throat, her face flushing red. She shot a glaring look at Sarah before turning back to the screen. "Sweetheart, please don't panic, it is just temporary, okay?" We desperately needed a quiet, safe place for Sarah while she figures out her legal situation. My apartment is way too small, and my downstairs neighbor has been complaining about the noise. "Wait, what are you saying? You let her move into my condo?" "It was just sitting there completely empty," Mom said, instantly defensive. "You are literally on the other side of the planet." It made perfect sense. She is going through so much trauma right now. I could feel a hot, burning sensation rising in my chest. Did you even think to ask me? Or did you just use the emergency security code I gave you to move her in behind my back? Mom sighed loudly, playing the victim. It really isn't a big deal, Liam, it's family. She's not trashing the place or throwing parties. You'll be back in a few months, and she will be totally sorted out and gone by then. I should have exploded. I should have demanded she pack her bags immediately. I should have remotely changed the lock codes right then and there. But I was 6,000 miles away, running on 3 hours of sleep, with a 14-hour shift looming ahead of me and a massive engineering team relying on me not to lose my composure. So, I took a deep, shaky breath, rubbed my temples, and said, "Okay, temporary. That is all." Sarah raised her wine glass to the camera. "Thanks, little bro." The call ended 5 minutes later, and I just stood there on the balcony, staring at the digital koi swimming in the smart pond below my building. My gut was screaming at me. Something felt deeply, profoundly wrong. And that was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, the updates from Mom became incredibly sparse. She would actively dodge any direct questions about the condo. Sarah stopped appearing in the background of our calls entirely. Then, I started noticing bizarre anomalies on my smart home app. The HVAC thermostat was constantly fluctuating to temperatures I never used. The smart lights in the living room were turning on at 3 a.m. And once, highly suspiciously, the kitchen security camera was manually disabled for 48 hours straight. I even got an automated email notification from my HOA building manager regarding a pet-related noise complaint. This made absolutely zero sense because I have never owned a pet in my life. Every time I brought these issues up, Mom brushed them off with practiced ease. "Sarah's totally fine, she's being so respectful of your space. Please don't stress yourself out over nothing." But I could hear the sharp, nervous edge in her voice. She was hiding something massive. Then, a week later, I got a phone call from my mortgage lender. It started as a routine courtesy call, just a notice about an administrative update to my account profile. I assumed it was a standard rate adjustment or a digital statement issue. But as the representative on the phone kept talking, the world around me seemed to stop spinning. "We just wanted to confirm that we have fully processed the title transfer to Miss Sarah Monroe, as authorized by the warranty deed submitted last Thursday." I literally had to sit down on my hotel bed. "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" She repeated the sentence, and this time, every single syllable hit me like a physical punch to the gut. My sister's name. A title transfer. A warranty deed. "I did not authorize any transfer," I said, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. "I am the sole, legal owner of that property." There was a long, uncomfortable pause on the line. I could hear her typing frantically. "Oh. I see. Well, sir, the paperwork was signed by Martha Monroe, acting as your legal power of attorney. It was fully notarized and submitted via a certified legal courier." My stomach dropped into a bottomless pit. The power of attorney. Before I left for this extended contract, I had granted my mother a highly limited, temporary power of attorney solely to manage my domestic utility bills, handle any HOA emergency assessments, and deal with my mail while I was out of the country. I never, in a million years, imagined she would weaponize it. I didn't scream at the bank rep. I stayed ice cold. I calmly requested digital copies of every single piece of documentation they had on file. The second I hung up, I called Marcus, an old college buddy who now worked as a ruthless real estate and contract lawyer. I sent him the PDFs. Then, I walked straight into my site manager's office, explained I had a severe family emergency, and booked the absolute first flight back to the States. Update 1. When I landed 18 hours later, jet-lagged, exhausted, but completely wired on pure adrenaline and rage, I went straight to my condo. I didn't announce I was coming. I just walked up to my front door and punched in my master code. They were already there. Sarah was sprawled out on my expensive couch, her bare feet propped up on my custom oak coffee table which now featured a massive, deep scratch right down the center. Mom was perched in my favorite armchair like a regal monarch holding court. They were both giggling at a video on Sarah's phone. Sarah looked up first, completely unbothered. "Oh, hey. Look who finally decided to show up." Mom smiled faintly, setting down a mug of chamomile tea. "Welcome back, sweetheart. We weren't expecting you so soon." I didn't say a single word. I dropped my heavy duffel bag by the door, pulled out my phone, and silently opened the voice memo recording app. I slipped the phone back into my breast pocket. I already knew this wasn't going to be a screaming match. Screaming implies you want the other person to understand your pain. I didn't care about their understanding. I wanted them to hang themselves with their own words. I stepped into the living room slowly, taking in the sheer disrespect. A half-eaten container of greasy takeout was sitting directly on the armrest of my couch. Sarah's wine glass was leaving a condensation ring on a side table. "Nice to see you both," I said, my voice eerily calm. "You got a haircut," Mom replied, entirely missing the tension in the room. "I always liked it a bit longer, but it's fine. Sarah gave a lazy, entitled stretch. You're not going to freak out, are you? Because I am really not in the mood for one of your classic responsibility lectures today. I've had a hard week. I'm not here to lecture anyone, I said. I walked past them into the kitchen and opened my refrigerator. Inside was a nightmare of things I didn't recognize. Artisanal vegan cheese, 3 cartons of oat milk, rotting Thai leftovers in containers I didn't own, and half a dozen bottles of expensive kombucha. I spotted one of my carefully pre-prepped frozen meal packs shoved all the way to the back, ripped open and completely frostbitten. My meticulously organized fridge looked like a college dorm. I closed the door quietly. Look, Sarah said, setting her glass down with a sharp clink. I know you're probably a little thrown off, but it's not like you were even using the place. It was literally collecting dust. I turned slowly, locking eyes with her. How exactly long have you been living here? She shrugged, totally indifferent. Since February, I think? Whenever that whole messy situation with David started blowing up. Honestly, my life has been such a blur lately. February, I echoed. That meant she had been squatting in my home for nearly 4 months, and neither of you thought to ask me, or even mention it? She scoffed loudly. I talked to Mom. She said it was completely fine. You always make such a massive deal out of every little thing. You weren't here. I was in crisis and needed a safe place. What is the actual issue? I stared at her, then slowly shifted my gaze to my mother. Mom hadn't said a word since her comment about my hair. She was staring intensely into her tea mug, but I could see the rigid tension in her shoulders. She knew the storm was here. You used the emergency access code I trusted you with to sneak her in? I asked Mom. It wasn't time sneaking. Mom finally snapped, her maternal defense mechanisms activating. I am your mother, Liam. I have your best interests at heart, and Sarah desperately needed a safe sanctuary. I was not going to let my daughter end up out on the street. She could have gotten an Airbnb. She could have rented a place. She could have stayed with you. She did stay with me. Mom fired back. But I live in a tiny 2-bedroom apartment with paper-thin walls, and my neighbor starts banging on the ceiling with a broom the second she hears a pin drop. It just wasn't feasible for Sarah's mental health. And this place, she gestured around my living room like she was gesturing to a public park, was just sitting here empty. You weren't even renting it out to make a profit. That is because it is my home, I said, my voice finally rising just a fraction. I didn't want anyone else living in it. Sarah dramatically rolled her eyes. Oh, please. God, you sound so incredibly dramatic right now. I took 2 slow steps toward the couch, looming over her. You forged legal documents, Sarah. That made the entire room freeze. The giggling stopped. The eye-rolling stopped. The silence was deafening. What the hell are you talking about? The giggling stopped. The giggling stopped. Sarah asked, her smug smile instantly faltering. You filed a warranty deed with my name forcibly removed and yours added. You submitted it through a legal courier, had it fraudulently notarized, and according to my mortgage lender, it was processed by someone actively abusing a power of attorney. Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. Mom's voice was barely a whisper when she finally spoke. You weren't here, Liam. We couldn't reach you for a few days when you were in transit. It was just temporary. No. I cut her off, my voice slicing through the room like a scalpel. You do not get to call it temporary when you legally transfer ownership of a $500,000 asset. That is not a misunderstanding. That is felony theft. Sarah shot up from the couch, crossing her arms defensively. Oh my God, relax. It was literally just to help me with the divorce proceedings. David's scumbag lawyer kept telling the mediator that I didn't have any hard assets, and he was aggressively pushing to avoid paying me spousal support. We just needed to show the judge that I had property. On paper, that's all it was. I blinked, genuinely stunned by the sheer audacity. You, what? It's not like I was actually going to keep the condo forever, she snapped, acting like I was the one being unreasonable. It was just a legal maneuver to show the family court that I had stability, that I could take care of myself, so they'd back off on the financial scrutiny. Mom helped me set it up. She had the legal authority to do it. You used my house as a prop in your divorce hearing, I said slowly, trying to process the absolute insanity of her logic. Sarah actually nodded, looking vindicated. Exactly. See, you get it. You always were the logical one in the family. I laughed. I actually threw my head back and laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. It was hollow, sharp, and bordered on unhinged. You used my hard-earned property to openly lie to a family court judge, I said. You actively falsified legal documents. That is massive fraud. Oh my God, stop being such a self-righteous prick. Sarah burst out, her face turning red. It's not like I sold the damn place. You make 6 figures. You have good money coming in from your little boat job. You don't even need this place right now. I needed help. Mom stepped up and helped me because you weren't even reachable. I was reachable, I said through gritted teeth. You just didn't want to ask me because you knew I would say absolutely not. That's exactly why Mom stepped in. Sarah shot back, pointing an accusing finger at me. Because you are always so rigid. It is always about times your time's boundaries, and times your time's space, and times your time's rules. You never make exceptions for family. You never have. My voice dropped back down to a deadly whisper. And you think you do? You think family means doing whatever the hell you want, to whoever you want, just because it's convenient for you? Liam, please, Mom interjected quietly, standing up from the armchair. It was never meant to be malicious. We just didn't know what else to do. You're not even married. You don't have children. This place, this condo could have been a beautiful new start for your sister. A new start? I snapped, glaring at my mother. This condo is not a therapy session, Mom. It is not a fresh slate for you to hand out like a $20 Starbucks gift card. I times earned times this. Every single tile on that floor, every appliance in that kitchen, every mortgage payment, I earned it with my own blood and sweat. Mom looked away, unable to hold my gaze. Sarah muttered under her breath, wow. Just wow. You always manage to make yourself the victim. No, I said, my voice completely devoid of emotion now. But I am officially done being your backup plan. And I am done being your silent ATM. Thanks for watching this video. I walked over to the hallway wall, grabbed my duffel bag, and slung it over my shoulder. You want to play house here? Go ahead. Sarah's eyes narrowed suspiciously. What exactly is that supposed to mean? I mean, don't let me interrupt your little fantasy. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and stopped the recording. Just know that every single step you've taken has been documented. Every smart camera footage, every digital lock login, every thermostat change, and I have already forwarded everything to my lawyer, including the fraudulent property transfer. Mom's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes widening in sheer terror. You didn't. I did, I said. Because unlike the two of you, I actually think about the consequences before I act. Sarah's face twisted into a mask of pure panic and fury. You're really going to sue us? Your own mother and sister? I'm going to do what is legally right, I said, stepping toward the front door. I just came here to give you one final chance to be honest with me, but I see now that was a complete waste of my time. I opened the door to leave. And that's when Sarah screamed. Wait, Liam, wait. You can't do this. I am still waiting on my final hearing date. If the family court judge finds out the deed is contested, David's lawyers will absolutely destroy me. But I didn't answer her. Not yet. Because what I found just outside my door, sitting on the small hallway console table where I usually kept my mail, made me freeze in my tracks. It was a thick, heavy, manila envelope. It had my name on it, marked, "Return to sender, address unknown," from the county clerk's office. My hands started trembling as I ripped it open right there in the hallway. I pulled out the official, stamped copy of the newly filed deed. I scanned the document once, then twice. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth would shatter. The new owner of the condo wasn't Sarah Monroe. It was Martha Monroe. My mother hadn't just transferred the condo into Sarah's name to help her with the divorce. She had used the power of attorney to transfer the condo into her own name, completely behind Sarah's back. For a terrifying moment, my mind went entirely blank. The absolute, staggering magnitude of the betrayal snapped into focus. She didn't just steal from me to help her golden child. She stole from me to enrich herself, using Sarah's divorce as the perfect smokescreen. I heard the soft click of the front door opening behind me. Sarah stepped out into the hallway, her arms folded tightly over her cardigan, her mascara slightly smudged from her emotional theatrics. Liam, do not just walk away from me like that. We need to sit down and talk about this. You can't just ruin my life over a condo. I didn't turn around right away. I just held the heavy envelope up in the air. Did you know? I asked, my voice echoing in the quiet hallway. Know what? She asked cautiously, her stubborn defiance wavering. I turned around slowly, flipped the document open, and shoved the deed right into her face. That our loving mother didn't actually transfer the condo into your name to help you look stable in court. She transferred it into her time's name, not yours. This isn't your property, Sarah. It never was. You're just a squatter in Mom's stolen house. Sarah's eyes flicked down to the paper. Her mouth opened, then slowly closed. The color completely drained from her face. For the first time in my entire life, I saw genuine, unadulterated panic in my sister's eyes. You're lying, she whispered. No, I said coldly, I'm not. She lunged forward, trying to snatch the paper from my hands, but I easily stepped back. Don't, I warned her. I already sent the digital scans to my lawyer. This is just the hard copy. Sarah froze, her eyes darting frantically between the official county seal on the paper and my face. Then, the realization hit her, and the anger boiled over. She told me it was temporary. Sarah hissed, her voice vibrating with rage. She explicitly promised me she was just holding the title for me until the divorce was finalized. She said David's lawyers would rip me apart if they saw a luxury property transferred directly to me right now. She promised it was mine. Yeah, I said quietly, feeling a sick sense of vindication. She promised me a lot of things too. The door opened wider behind Sarah. Mom stepped out into the hallway, her hands clasped neatly in front of her like she was hosting a Sunday church bake sale, desperately trying to maintain her facade of control. Liam, Mom said, her voice breathy and frantic. Please do not misunderstand what you are looking at. This was never, ever about taking anything away from you permanently. I only did what I absolutely had to do to protect Sarah. Sarah spun around like a coiled snake, facing our mother. Protect me? You lied to my face. I did not lie, Mom cried out, taking a step back, trying to sound soothing. I adjusted the plan. You know how incredibly complicated legal things can get, Sarah. The bank, the title company, the mediators. It was just safer and cleaner if everything went through me first. But I always intended to transfer it back to you. Eventually. The 7. Oh, that is rich, I muttered, shaking my head. They both snapped their heads toward me. You times always intended? I asked, stepping closer to my mother. Is that why you never told me? Is that why you actively dodged my phone calls for months? Is that why you used my emergency code to sneak her in, disabled my interior security cameras, and filed legal papers behind my back while I was stuck on another continent? Mom took a trembling step toward me, tears welling up in her eyes. Sweetheart, I did it for this family. You know how much your sister has suffered. She has been through 2 horrific, abusive marriages. She is entirely alone in this world. She desperately needed something solid to build her life on. And what about me? I asked. I wasn't yelling, but my voice cracked just a fraction. What do I get, Mom? Her expression instantly shifted, softening into that practiced, manipulative look of maternal disappointment. You don't need anything, Liam, she said, as if that simple sentence explained and justified every horrible thing she had done. You have always been so strong. So incredibly capable. I knew, deep down, that you would understand. And just like that, the illusion shattered completely. There it was, the exact same dynamic that had defined my entire existence. The fragile golden child constantly needs rescuing, no matter the cost. And the capable, independent child, just needs to shut up, take the hit, and be fine with it. That was the exact moment something inside me permanently broke. It wasn't a loud, dramatic explosion. It was quiet. It felt like a thick, heavy rope snapping deep underwater. And in its place came a strange, chilling calm. A total, numb clarity. I looked at my mother, I looked at my sister. I didn't say another word. I just turned around, walked down the hallway, got into the elevator, and left the building. Update 2. The next 48 hours were a complete blur. I didn't sleep. I barely ate. I booked a sterile hotel room across town, using my accumulated travel reward points. I just sat in the uncomfortable armchair in silence, staring at the ceiling, replaying the last 8 years of my life. I had worked myself to the bone to build stability. All those freezing nights in offshore ports. All those double shifts where my hands bled from turning wrenches. The relationships that failed because I was never home. I sacrificed my youth for that condo. It was proof that I mattered, that I had built something real, and they stole it without a second thought. Because I was capable. On Monday morning, I walked into the sleek downtown office of my lawyer, Marcus. He was a shark in a tailored suit, methodical, cold, and completely appalled when I laid out the timeline and the documents. Let me be incredibly blunt with you, Liam, Marcus said, leaning over his mahogany desk. This is felony fraud. Plain and simple. A power of attorney does not grant an agent the blanket right to transfer real estate property to themselves, or to a third party, unless it is explicitly, specifically authorized in the original document. Which, looking at what you signed, it absolutely wasn't. It wasn't, I confirmed, my voice hollow. I gave her limited, temporary authority to pay my HOA fees and manage my utility bills. That is it. Then we are going to fight this, Marcus said, his eyes gleaming with professional anticipation, and we are going to utterly destroy them. I thought I would feel relief. But I just felt empty. Suing your own mother and sister isn't exactly a childhood dream. But then, Marcus showed me something that completely erased any lingering guilt I had. I want to make sure they can never, ever do this to anyone else. I told him. Good, Marcus said, spinning his laptop around to face me. Because you aren't just suing for a property dispute anymore. We served an emergency subpoena for financial disclosures, since your mother acted as your fiduciary agent. She was legally obligated to document every single penny she touched. He clicked open a highlighted PDF. This is her personal checking account history. And right here, he pointed to a line item from 3 months ago. It is a $15,000 wire transfer. I leaned in, squinting at the screen. The transfer was pulled directly from my emergency high-yield savings account, an account Mom was authorized to monitor for mortgage purposes. The money had been wired into her personal checking account under a memo labeled Family Emergency. $15,000, I whispered. She didn't just steal the house, Liam, Marcus said quietly. She drained your emergency fund. And according to her credit inquiries, she was preparing to take out a massive home equity line of credit against your condo next week. She was going to bleed the property dry, hand the debt to you, and walk away. The cold clarity I felt in the hallway solidified into pure ice. Let's take them down. Every single piece of them. The setup began meticulously. I compiled every shred of evidence. The smart lock app provided timestamped logs showing Sarah entering and exiting the property dozens of times long before her supposed emergency arose. We had proof she was using the condo as a party pad while claiming to the family court that she was a terrified abuse victim in hiding. Next, I went after her daily life. I reached out to the condo board and scheduled a private meeting with Arthur, the notoriously strict HOA president. I handed him a thick folder containing the noise complaints, the unauthorized subletting evidence, and undeniable proof that Sarah had secretly moved a yappy French bulldog into a strictly no-pets building. Arthur's face turned purple with rage. She submitted a signed affidavit claiming you authorized her residency and the emotional support animal, he growled. She forged my signature. I said plainly. I never gave her permission to live here, let alone bring a dog that's currently destroying my hardwood floors. I will handle this personally, Arthur promised. Then, I met with the notary who had stamped the fraudulent deed. I didn't threaten him. I just walked into his office, smiled, and asked him to confirm his protocol for verifying identity when the property owner isn't present. The man started sweating through his shirt before I even finished the sentence. He admitted Mom told him I was unreachable, and because it was a slow Tuesday, he just let it slide. I casually mentioned he should probably retain counsel before the state licensing board contacted him. Another domino fell. But the most devastating piece of the puzzle came from David, Sarah's ex-husband. We met at a discreet coffee shop downtown. He looked exhausted, but when I told him what Sarah and Mom had done, he let out a loud bitter bark of laughter. Totally believable. David said, shaking his head, Sarah is obsessed with winning. The divorce was never about her being a victim. It was about leverage. She wanted a luxury bachelorette pad funded by her wealthy brother, and she wanted to hide her assets from the mediator so I'd have to pay her alimony. Before we left, David emailed me hundreds of screenshots of text messages between him and Sarah. Messages where Sarah explicitly bragged, Mom says the condo will be mine permanently in a few months anyway, and, Liam is too far away to do anything about it. He's a pushover. It was the smoking gun. With Marcus driving the legal machine, we secured an emergency court injunction. The judge was so appalled by the blatant forgery and fiduciary abuse that he immediately voided the deed transfers, revoked the power of attorney, and restored full legal ownership to me. But I didn't tell Mom or Sarah. I wanted them to find out the hard way. I contacted the building's security manager and had the smart locks digitally reset. I explicitly restricted access to anyone not named on the official, restored deed. I asked the manager to schedule the lock reset for exactly 10:30 a.m. on a Tuesday. Because I wanted to be there to watch. Tuesday morning was bright and sunny. I parked my rental car across the street from the condo complex, sipping black coffee, wearing sunglasses, watching the front entrance like a detective on a stakeout. At exactly 10:27 a.m., Sarah's white SUV pulled into the circular driveway. She stepped out, dressed in expensive yoga pants, her phone pressed to her ear, a massive iced latte in her hand. Her illegal French bulldog was tucked under one arm. She looked completely carefree, untouchable. I watched as she strolled up to the main glass doors of my building. She confidently punched her code into the keypad. The light flashed red. The door didn't budge. She frowned, shifted the dog in her arms, and typed the code again, slower this time. Red light. She muttered something angrily into her phone, hung up, and hammered the keypad a third time. Denied. At 10:33 a.m., Arthur and two burly building security guards walked out of the lobby and approached her through the glass. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I saw the exact moment reality shattered her world. The security guard handed her a copy of the court injunction and the HOA eviction notice. Sarah's shoulders stiffened. She started screaming, gesturing wildly at the building. The guard simply pointed up at the security camera, shook his head, and stepped back inside, locking the glass door in her face. She was locked out, homeless, on the street. My phone buzzed in my pocket 2 minutes later. Mom. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Hello? Liam, Mom shrieked, her voice pure hysteria. Why on earth is Sarah locked out of the building? The security guards are telling her something about a legal reversal order. You need to call them right now and fix this. I took a slow sip of my coffee. I can't fix it, Mom. Because it's not her condo. And it's not yours. Her breath hitched loudly. You can't just kick her out onto the street. All her clothes are in there. Her life is in there. She built her life on felonies, I said, my voice eerily calm, and so did you. You are being unnecessarily vindictive. Mom cried, sobbing now. We are your family, Liam, family. Family doesn't forge deeds. I replied. Family doesn't commit perjury in divorce court. And family certainly doesn't wire $15,000 out of an emergency savings account to pay for their own personal expenses. Dead silence on the other end of the line. The crying instantly stopped. I know about the money, Mom, I said softly. I know about the home equity line of credit you tried to open. I know everything. I was going to pay it back. She whispered weakly. Sure you were, I said. Right after you successfully stole my house. It's over, Mom. The court voided your fake deed. The HOA is currently fining Sarah $5,000 for the illegal dog and the damages to my floors. And you will both be hearing from Marcus regarding the criminal fraud charges. She tried to beg. She tried to apologize. She tried to play the victim one last time. I just hung up the phone, blocked her number, and drove away. The aftermath was an absolute bloodbath. Sarah tried to fight the perjury and fraud charges, but David's lawyers submitted the text messages I provided. The family court judge absolutely crucified her. She was denied all spousal support, slapped with massive legal fees, and forced to move into a cheap motel on the outskirts of town. Mom didn't fare any better. Her blatant misuse of a legal power of attorney triggered a formal investigation. Facing potential jail time for wire fraud, she was forced to liquidate her own retirement savings to instantly repay my $15,000, plus damages, plus all of my legal fees. She had to stand up in a crowded courtroom and read a court-mandated apology on the public record, admitting she had stolen from her own son. I didn't move back into the condo. The space felt tainted. Instead, I took a month-long leave of absence from work and flew to Iceland. I hiked across glaciers, breathed in the freezing, pristine air, and finally let go of the anger that had been burning inside me for a lifetime. When I came back, I immediately sold the condo for a massive profit. I used the cash to buy a beautiful, modest little house in a quiet, heavily wooded suburb. It has a massive backyard, tons of natural sunlight, and absolutely no shared walls. I built a woodworking shop in the garage. I started sleeping 8 hours a night. Sarah tried to email me a few times, desperate apologies, excuses, begging for a loan to help her get an apartment. I never replied. Mom sent a handwritten letter claiming my actions had broken her heart. I threw it directly into the fireplace. You can't heal in the exact same environment that broke you. Sometimes, the only way to win is to walk away entirely. I didn't just burn the bridge to my toxic family. I completely demolished it, salted the earth, and built a castle on the other side. And honestly, waking up every morning in a home that is entirely mine, knowing they can never touch me again, is the greatest revenge I could have ever asked for. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel out and allows us to bring you even more awesome stories. Thank you so much for watching.